Her breath stopped. When one piece of lingerie made the impossible feel suddenly real. Have you ever found something that shouldn't exist? Something so impossible, so perfectly wrong, that finding it makes you question whether you're awake or dreaming. That's what happened to me on a forest path at dawn. I found a piece of lingerie lying there like it had been waiting for me. No footprints around it, no explanation. Just this soft, delicate thing that represented everything I'd been trying to bury. And when I saw it, my breath stopped, because I knew, with absolute certainty, that nothing would ever be the same. Before I take you into that forest, into that impossible morning that changed everything, you need to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Because what I'm about to share isn't just a story, it's a journey into the surreal space where desire meets reality, where the impossible becomes tangible, where the things we suppress find ways to manifest in the physical world. I share stories like this every single week, stories that will make you question what's real and what's hidden in the depths of your own mind. So subscribe now and smash that like button because you're going to want others to find this story too. Trust me, by the end, you'll understand why this lingerie wasn't just an object. It was a message from a part of myself I'd been trying to kill. My name is Vivian. I'm 37 years old. And 3 months ago, I had an experience that exists somewhere between reality and dream, between the physical world and the psychological one. I still don't fully understand what happened that morning on the forest path. I don't know if what I found was objectively real, or if my mind created it as a manifestation of everything I'd been suppressing. But I know that finding it changed me, made the impossible feel suddenly, terrifyingly real, made me confront truths about myself I'd spent decades avoiding. I need to give you context, though the context itself feels surreal looking back on it. For the 6 months leading up to that morning, I'd been having dreams. Vivid, recurring dreams that felt more real than my waking life. Dreams about a woman I'd never met but who felt intimately familiar. In these dreams, we existed in spaces that defied logic, forests that shifted and breathed, buildings with impossible architecture, landscapes that were simultaneously beautiful and unsettling. And in every dream, there was a connection between us that I couldn't name. Not romantic exactly, though there was desire. Not friendship, though there was intimacy. Something else. Something that felt like recognition on a soul level. The woman in my dreams was always wearing the same thing. Delicate black lingerie that seemed to glow against her skin in the strange light of the dream spaces, and she never spoke, just looked at me with eyes that held infinite understanding, eyes that said she knew everything I was hiding from myself, everything I was afraid to acknowledge, everything I'd buried so deep I thought it was gone forever. When I'd wake from these dreams, I'd feel disoriented, like I'd been somewhere real and had been forcibly pulled back, like part of me was still in that other place, still with that woman, still existing in that space of impossible connection. I tried to dismiss the dreams as stress, as my subconscious processing the dissatisfaction I felt with my life. I was married, had been for 11 years. My husband Jacob was a good man, reliable, stable, everything society tells you to value in a partner. But our relationship had become mechanical over the years, routine without passion, companionship without real intimacy. We were roommates who shared a life, not lovers who shared themselves, and I'd accepted that as normal, as what happens in long marriages, as the trade-off for security and stability. But the dreams persisted, became more frequent, more intense. I'd wake gasping, my body responding to them in ways that made me feel guilty and confused, because the desire I felt in those dreams was more powerful than anything I'd experienced in my waking life. More real than 11 years of marriage to Jacob, more authentic than any connection I'd ever had with another person. And that terrified me, made me question what it meant, made me wonder if there was something fundamentally broken in me that I desired Dream Woman more than I desired my actual husband. If you've ever had dreams that felt more real than your life, drop a comment right now and tell me about it. Because I need to know I'm not alone in this surreal space between sleeping and waking. I started researching dreams obsessively, trying to understand what mine meant. Dream dictionaries told me that recurring figures represented parts of myself. That the woman in black lingerie was some aspect of my own psyche trying to communicate something I was ignoring. That the impossible landscapes represented my inner emotional world. That the connection I felt was really connection with myself, with parts of myself I'd disowned or suppressed. Psychologically, it made sense, but it didn't feel true, because the woman in my dreams felt separate from me, felt like another consciousness, another being, reaching across some impossible divide to connect with me. I considered therapy, but couldn't figure out how to explain what was happening without sounding insane. Couldn't say, I'm having recurring dreams about a woman in lingerie who makes me feel things my husband never has, and I think she might be real. That would get me diagnosed with something, prescribed medication, labeled as someone having a breakdown. So I kept it to myself, carried it alone, let the dreams continue while my waking life became increasingly hollow and disconnected. Then came the morning everything changed. It was late September, early enough that dawn was just beginning when I woke at 5 a.m. from another dream of the woman. This time, the dream had been different, more urgent. The woman had been standing on a forest path I recognized, a trail near my house that I walked sometimes when I needed to think. She'd looked directly at me with those infinite eyes, and then placed something on the ground at her feet, the black lingerie. She'd removed it and placed it there deliberately, like she was leaving me a gift, or a message, or proof. Then she'd looked at me one more time and disappeared, fading into the forest like she was made of mist. I woke with my heart racing, that familiar disorientation of not knowing which world was real. But this time was different. This time I felt pulled, like I needed to go to that forest path, like something was waiting for me there. I know how insane that sounds. I know dream logic doesn't translate to waking reality, but the pull was undeniable, overwhelming. I got up quietly, not waking Jacob, got dressed in the pre-dawn darkness, and left the house. And if you're still watching, hit that like button right now, because what I found on that forest path will change how you think about reality forever. The forest was exactly as it had been in my dream. Early morning mist rising from the ground, first light filtering through the trees, creating those long golden rays that make everything look magical and unreal. The air was cool, that particular September morning coolness that feels like transition between seasons. I walked the familiar path, my breath visible in small clouds, my footsteps muffled by fallen leaves. And I was looking for something even though logically I knew I wouldn't find anything. Knew that dream objects don't manifest in physical reality. Knew I was being crazy walking through the woods at dawn looking for lingerie from my dreams. But then I saw it, and my breath stopped. Actually stopped, my lungs forgetting how to function, my entire body freezing mid-step. There on the path, exactly where the woman had placed it in my dream, was a piece of black lingerie, delicate lace, exactly matching what I'd seen in my dreams for 6 months. Just lying there on the forest path like it had been waiting for me, like it had been placed there deliberately for me to find. I stood there staring at it for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. My mind was racing through explanations. Someone had dropped it. Some couple had been here and left it by accident. It was a coincidence. It wasn't the same lingerie from my dreams because dream lingerie doesn't exist in physical reality. This was just my brain making connections, seeing patterns that weren't there, imposing dream logic onto random physical objects. But even as I thought these rational explanations, I didn't believe them, because the lingerie was exactly right, exactly as it had appeared in my dreams. Same style, same delicate construction, same way it seemed to catch and hold the light even in the dim dawn. And there were no footprints around it. The forest floor was damp with morning dew, soft enough that footprints should have been visible, but there were none. Just the lingerie lying there pristine and impossible on the path where no one should have been, where nothing should have been left. I looked around, expecting to see someone, expecting some explanation, but the forest was completely empty. Just me and the trees and the mist and this impossible object that shouldn't exist. Subscribe to this channel right now if you want more stories that blur the line between reality and something else, because this is only the beginning. I bent down slowly, my hand shaking as I reached for the lingerie. Part of me expected it to disappear when I touched it, to reveal itself as hallucination or dream residue, but it didn't disappear. It was real. Solid. I picked it up and the fabric was cool and soft in my hands, the lace delicate and intricate. I held it and felt something shift inside me. Some barrier I'd maintained between my dream life and waking life crumbling. Some wall I'd built between the desire I felt in dreams and the numbness I felt in reality dissolving. Because holding this lingerie, this impossible thing that shouldn't exist, made everything feel suddenly real, made the woman from my dreams feel real, made the connection I'd felt feel real, made the desire I'd been experiencing in that dream space feel valid and true, and something I could no longer dismiss as subconscious processing or stress manifestation or psychological symbolism. This was real. I was holding proof. The impossible had manifested. And that meant everything I'd been feeling, everything I'd been experiencing in those dreams, was true in some way I didn't understand, but could no longer deny. I stood there in the forest holding lingerie as the sun rose higher and the mist began to burn off, and the impossible morning became an impossible day. And I realized I had to make a choice. I could rationalize this away, could create some explanation that allowed me to maintain my comfortable denial. Could go home and put this lingerie somewhere and never think about it again and go back to my hollow marriage and my disconnected life and pretend this hadn't happened. Or I could accept it, could acknowledge that something had shifted, that the impossible was real, that there was a connection happening that transcended normal reality, that the desire I felt was valid and true even if I didn't understand its source or meaning. I chose to accept it, and in that acceptance, everything changed. Not immediately, not dramatically, but fundamentally. I walked home holding the lingerie, entered my house where Jacob was still sleeping, and I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't continue living the life I'd been living, couldn't continue suppressing whatever was trying to emerge, couldn't continue denying the truth that the lingerie represented, that I was living a lie, that my marriage was empty, that there was desire in me for something I couldn't name, but that was more real than anything in my physical world. The weeks that followed were strange and difficult. I kept the lingerie hidden, taking it out sometimes when I was alone just to confirm it was real, that I hadn't imagined the whole thing. And the dreams continued, but now they felt different. The woman in them seemed pleased, seemed to be acknowledging that I'd received her message, that I'd accepted the proof she'd offered, that I was ready now for whatever came next. If this story is making you feel something profound, if it's awakening something in you that you've been trying to suppress, leave a comment telling me what that is. Share your truth. This is a safe space. I started therapy, finally. Found a therapist who specialized in dream work and Jungian psychology, who wouldn't immediately pathologize my experience, but who could help me understand it. And through therapy, I began to understand that the woman in my dreams represented parts of myself I'd disowned, aspects of my sexuality, my desire, my authentic self that I'd suppressed to fit into the life I thought I was supposed to have. The lingerie represented vulnerability, femininity expressed on my own terms rather than for male consumption, desire that was mine rather than responsive to someone else's. The impossible thing that happened that morning in the forest, whether the lingerie was objectively real or whether my mind created it as a physical manifestation of psychological need, didn't matter as much as what it represented. It represented my psyche breaking through the walls I'd built, forcing me to pay attention, making the suppressed aspects of myself impossible to ignore. The breath stopping wasn't about the physical object. It was about the realization that I could no longer hide from myself, that the impossible thing I'd been denying, my own authentic desire, my own truth, my own need for real connection rather than comfortable emptiness, was real and demanding acknowledgement. I'm not going to tell you this story has a neat ending. It doesn't. 3 months later, I'm still in my marriage, but it's changed. Jacob and I are in couples therapy now, trying to figure out if there's anything real to salvage, or if we've been living parallel lives pretending to be connected. I'm exploring parts of myself I'd buried, my sexuality, my desires, what I actually want rather than what I thought I should want. I'm learning to listen to the parts of myself I'd been ignoring, the parts that had to create surreal dream experiences and impossible physical manifestations to get my attention. The lingerie is still hidden in my closet, Sometimes I take it out and hold it and remember that impossible morning. Remember the feeling of my breath stopping. Remember the moment when everything I'd been denying became undeniably real. And I'm grateful for it. Grateful that some part of me loved me enough to break through my defenses. Grateful that the impossible became real. Grateful that I couldn't ignore it anymore. Because here's what I've learned through this surreal experience. The things we suppress don't disappear. They find ways to manifest. They create dreams and symbols, and sometimes, impossibly, they create physical proof that demands acknowledgement. The woman in my dreams was me. The desire I felt was my own desire finally breaking through decades of suppression. The lingerie was my psyche's way of saying, you can't ignore this anymore. You can't keep living a lie. You can't keep denying what's true. And standing on that forest path at dawn, holding impossible proof of my own suppressed truth, I finally understood what I'd been running from. Not another person, not an affair or betrayal or any external thing. I'd been running from myself, from the parts of myself that didn't fit the narrative I'd constructed, from desires that threatened the comfortable life I'd built, from truth that would require me to change everything. The impossible feeling real wasn't about the lingerie manifesting physically. It was about me finally accepting that my authentic self, with all its complicated desires and needs that didn't fit into heteronormative marriage and conventional life, was real, was valid, deserved acknowledgement, deserved space to exist. And that acceptance, that breath-stopping moment of recognition, changed everything, even though nothing had changed yet externally. If you've made it this far in this surreal journey, thank you for staying with me. Thank you for being open to a story that doesn't make conventional sense, that exists in the liminal space between dream and reality, between psychological symbolism and physical manifestation. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories that explore the strange territories of human consciousness and desire. Smash that like button if this awakened something in you. And leave a comment sharing your own impossible experiences, your own moments when the suppressed became undeniable, your own breath-stopping realizations. Because these stories matter. Your story matters. The surreal experiences that don't fit into rational explanation matter. They're often the truest things about us, the deepest truths breaking through the surfaces we construct. And the more we share them, the less alone we feel in the impossible spaces we inhabit. I found lingerie on a forest path at dawn, and it changed my life. Not because of what it was, but because of what it represented. The impossible becoming real. The suppressed becoming undeniable, the authentic self finally breaking through. And maybe that's the point of all surreal experiences. Maybe they're not about the external strangeness, but about the internal truth finally finding a way to be seen. Maybe the forest path was never about physical geography, but about the journey into myself. Maybe the lingerie was never about the object, but about what I'd been hiding. Maybe the woman in my dreams was never separate from me, but was me calling to myself across the divide I'd created between who I was and who I pretended to be. 3 months later, I'm still processing, still figuring out what this means for my life going forward, still exploring the desires and truths that the lingerie represented, still learning to listen to the parts of myself I'd been silencing. It's not comfortable, it's not easy, but it's real in a way my life hadn't been for decades. And that realness, that authenticity, is worth the discomfort of change. The surreal morning in the forest was a gift. A strange, impossible gift from my psyche to myself. A message that I was ready, even if I didn't think I was, to face truth, to acknowledge desire, to stop living in comfortable numbness and start living in uncomfortable authenticity. The breath-stopping wasn't fear, though it felt like it in the moment. It was recognition. It was my entire being acknowledging that something fundamental was shifting, that the impossible was becoming real, that I was finally ready to face myself. So subscribe to this channel for more stories that explore the surreal territories where truth lives, for more journeys into the spaces between what we show and what we hide, for more explorations of the impossible moments that change everything. And remember, the things you're suppressing will find ways to manifest. They'll create dreams, symbols, impossible experiences that demand your attention. And when they do, When your breath stops because the impossible is suddenly real. That's your psyche loving you enough to break through your defenses. That's your authentic self refusing to be buried anymore. That's your truth demanding acknowledgement. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this surreal story. Thank you for being open to experiences that don't fit conventional explanation. Your presence matters. Your engagement matters. Your willingness to explore these strange territories matters. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share this with someone who needs to know that the impossible can become real, that suppressed truth always finds a way to surface, that breath-stopping moments of recognition are invitations to transformation. The lingerie still exists. Hidden in my closet, physical proof of something that shouldn't be possible, tangible evidence of the surreal morning that changed everything. And sometimes I take it out and hold it and remember. Remember the forest path at dawn. Remember the impossible discovery. Remember the moment my breath stopped and I knew, with absolute certainty, that nothing would ever be the same, because the impossible had become real, and so had I. The end.